Morning, this is Chris Matten from PwC reporting from the Risk Minds Conference in Amsterdam in December 2015. It's my great pleasure to be joined this morning by Lord Hague, the former Foreign Secretary and Chairman of the Conservative Party. So, Lord Hague, what are you going to be saying to this room full of bankers about political risk? I think you're talking about, is that right? Or?
Well, I'm talking about how politicians view risk, how in general political leaders are generally more open to risk than corporates, I think. Although I will say in relation to regulation that they're very risk averse about having the same catastrophe twice,
right?
Because that is something politicians and regulators really get blamed for. So I'm going to be talking about that, and also about some of the risks in today's world of great political and economic uncertainty.
And what are some of those?
Well, we see, because of the information revolution, because of the rise in religious intolerance in the Middle East, because of demographic change, we're actually seeing some very rapid change and often unexpected, as we've seen across North Africa and the Middle East. And on that, I will argue that you can't predict all the crises of the next 10 and 20 years.
That's why they're crises.
You have to get set up so that you can deal with any crisis.
Right.
So your company, your government, whoever it may be, it knows how to handle the unexpected crisis. That is as important as trying to predict what it's going to be.
Right. Okay, that's very interesting. Now let me ask you, as a politician for many years, do you think banks have learnt their lessons? I was talking to someone earlier on about the 200 odd billion that banks have paid in fines and settlements over the past 5 years for various misdemeanors. Do you think banks are out of the woods, or are they still on the naughty chair?
Well, they're still sitting on the edge of the naughty chair,
right.
I think, because a reputation once lost takes a long time to rebuild. I would say decades overall to rebuild. And so it's very important for the financial services industry as a whole to really keep demonstrating there are no more scandals. And let's hope there aren't, and to show that there can be trust and confidence in them again.
And is that a hope that you share, or do you think there will be more scandals?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to make a prediction about that. But it would certainly be disastrous if there was. There's a great deal of public anger still out there at governments as well as at banks, and that will become much stronger if some of the things that happened in the last decade ever happen again.
So what is it banks have to do other than avoid more scandals? What else is it they need to do?
Well, it is demonstrate that trust. I mean, there are too many areas. I can't range across the whole of banking policy, nor am I expert to do so in a matter of seconds. But to demonstrate trust again, and so that judgment rather than box ticking is then applied to every risk. There is a danger of bureaucratizing and computerizing risk so that we think we've dealt with it. Actually, it still requires human judgment by senior, experienced people.
But that's exactly the problem that we constantly see, because the regulators are coming up with more and more lists of things you need to do, that inevitably you still have to tick those boxes, because if you don't tick the boxes, you are by definition at fault. And that really doesn't leave people with enough time necessarily to think about the non-box ticking, the judgment that you're talking about.
Well, in that case, if that happens to that degree that people don't have the time to stand back and think, and look at things from a common sense point of view, then that becomes dangerous again. And that's when regulation starts to be at fault. And of course, you can see from so many overlapping sources of regulation, in the UK, for instance, it comes not only from UK authorities, but from EU authorities, that there are dangers in so many overlapping regulations that people can't take the overall common sense view again. That's something that governments will really have to watch.
Right, and it's not just even the EU, it's even American legislation.
Of course,
it's extraterritorial,
absolutely.
things like FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, and so on and so on.
Very much. But people have to understand, this is a reaction to a very serious crisis that was an extremely traumatic event for governments and for the public in many countries. And so it's understandable that there is this reaction. And the answer is to show that trust and confidence can be placed in the industry again over a sustained period of time.
Right, which is obviously quite a challenge. It's going to take a number of years before we actually see whether they've managed to do that or not.
That's
so
right.
As you say, in the meantime, they're still on the edge of the naughty chair.
On the edge of the naughty chair.
Excellent.
Getting a bit nearer to the edge.
Lord Hague, thank you very much indeed. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you.